Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this the Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today, before we get into the video once again, I am front-loading you with the shilling, because, at least at time of recording, I am just three subscribers off 10,000 subscribers. And I would just love for, after this video to go out, or even before it, to reach that 10,000 mark. And my god, if I reach it, you can be sure Friday, there's going to be some sort of celebration stream. It'll be low effort, don't get me wrong. But my god, this has been 6-7 years in the making. Just dipping my toe in the water, starting to read around a load of subjects I didn't have my head fully around. And now I am, basically as a hobby, giving you takes and giving you alternative media news coverage that I hope you just love. Obviously, while front-loading this, special thank you to all my members and super chatters out there. It's really you that make me want to keep going, keep making these streams, keep making these videos. It goes a long way. Obviously, if anyone else feels like I do a good enough job for that, please consider becoming a member or sending a couple of quid in super thanks or super chats. It goes a long way. Right, anyway, enough of that. Let's get right into it. It has been no secret that Labour have been an absolute travesty since getting into power, but I didn't think they'd be as embarrassing as they are. For those of you who don't know, Rachel Reeves is effectively just a massive liar, breaking a few manifesto pledges, raising taxes everywhere, pledging more money to the NHS even though they said that they'd rather reform it than give it more money. Nope, they still get 20-odd billion more a year now. Tax have been raised to 40 billion, people have already been fired from their jobs because of this budget that's not even implemented yet, and by pretty much every metric it's going worse than Liz Truss's time in office, but no one's been fired yet because they have 400 seats. Anyway, a big topic of her lies was about her saying that she was an economist at the Bank of England, which basically turned out to be not true, and she admitted it's not true by changing her LinkedIn CV. I've covered it in previous videos, you've probably heard of it, but she keeps carrying on with the lie despite all this, despite literally being caught out. On live TV, by the way.
Well, I'm really proud to have worked as an economist at the Bank of England before I became a Member of Parliament, and also in financial services at Halifax Bank of Scotland. I've got the experience to do this job as Chancellor of the Exchequer, as well as the 14 years as I had as a Member of Parliament, chairing the Business Select Committee and as Shadow Chancellor. People should judge me on the job that I do, fixing the economy, fixing the mess that we inherited from the Conservative government.
That was after she was asked, according to ITV Politics, literally yesterday, by the way, this clip is from yesterday, when she was asked about changing her LinkedIn profile and her CV. Literally when asked, oh, why did you change your job title from economist, she just says, oh, I was really proud to be an economist. And I think someone's told her to smile more in interviews, by the way, because that looks more like a grimace than a smile.
But what do you say about the fact there was a change made to the profile and it now says retail banking, it once said economist? Just explain that.
Well, I'm an economist. I studied economics. I got a master's in economics from the London School of Economics.
I'm not being funny. I mean, I know I don't have a master's, but if I did carry on to do a master's in geology, I wouldn't call myself a geologist because that isn't my job, as it's not your job to be an economist when you are heading a complaints department in Halifax, which, as I've covered in other videos, the reason she moved to Halifax from London to be part of that complaints team was effectively to do a whole bunch of Labour Council work and effectively get up into the select committee to then be selected for a few seats. And in one of those seats she actually lost to Nigel Farage, came third, Farage came second, and then obviously a Tory won. So it's just blatant lies at this point. You cannot trust a word that she says. I don't even trust that you can't trust that she's fixing the economy. She's not. Unemployment's already going up. Inflation's already going up. The cost of borrowing money, the gilt yields, that's going up as well. Everything's got worse and has stayed consistently worse, by the way, than when Liz Truss was in charge. And to some extent you can blame inheriting some of that, but no. If there's one thing I can give Rishi Sunak, he did improve all these economic indicators that all the mainstream and all the Bank of England care about. But now it's got worse, and nobody's really trying to kick them out. You get the odd, Andrew Bailey said, oh yeah, no, this budget's pretty bad. But the mainstream media, they'll give them a bit of a tough time in interviews, a bit like ITV's doing here, but it won't be anywhere near the vitriol they gave Liz Truss, because life isn't fair. But I think you get the point here. Yes, Rachel Reeves is not only a thief, taking all the money that she can through taxes from your paycheck and for every sale that is made, but she is also just lying to you all the time.
And I worked as an economist at the Bank of England. I then used that experience in the private sector, working for Halifax Bank of Scotland, where I worked in financial services before I became an MP 14 and a bit years ago.
This is all just a lie, by the way. She wasn't. I don't even think she was a trainee economist. She was a trainee something at the Bank of England. Basically had the reputation for being completely useless. And as I say, then started to look into politics, so got a job in Halifax, where she says she was in financial services. I mean, again, in the complaints department, she hardly needed to use any of her knowledge as an economist, use anything from a master's in that, which is very usual, by the way, that you leave university and then don't use any of the skills you get at university. That certainly happened with me in my professional career. So it's all just nonsense. And again, 14 years ago she became an MP. So even if she had all these skills as an economist, it'd be hard to actually apply them again now. 14 years is a long time.
But it was changed, wasn't it, the profile?
Well, I worked as an economist. That is my profession. I am an economist. And then I worked in retail banking at Halifax Bank of Scotland in Halifax before I became a Member of Parliament. I'm proud of the work that I did before I became an MP, both at the Bank of England and in the private sector in retail banking.
Yeah, she is just an NPC liar. I think the point's been made to death now. You cannot trust a word that comes out of Robin Rachel Thieves' mouth, despite the fact that she tacitly admitted that she lied on her CV by changing her LinkedIn profile. Now she's being directly asked about it. This is an anon, again, another citizens journalist anon talking point that has made it to the mainstream. They don't take it seriously. They just do not take any sort of integrity or honesty seriously. And I'm not saying necessarily the Tories took honesty and integrity seriously either. They certainly at least try to hide it better. They certainly have better answers to being caught out in lies like this. But, I mean, what do you expect from the Uniparty? This is effectively what they've been trained to do. You go to a media class on how to deal with interviews like this, you get trained on how to lie without lying, which, that's been happening for decades now. This is why reform's a breath of fresh air, because they deal with the media completely differently to a point where people actually seem interested to hear what they say, partly because people can actually trust them. Anyway, this is the example of Rachel Reeves lying. We already knew that. Next up is a bit of a weird one. It's blasphemy laws being brought back into the House of Parliament as a talking point, as maybe we will actually have blasphemy laws soon. I mean, we already pretty much de facto have them because of that Batley and Spen teacher that Labour ex-advisors basically said, oh, that's fine, what did he expect? What did he expect by blaspheming in Britain? But here is Labour MP Tahir Ali in the House of Commons. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. November marks Islamophobia Awareness Month. Last year, the United Nations Human Rights Council adopted a resolution condemning the desecration of religious texts, including the Quran.
My God, this guy knows how to play Starmer like a keyboard, clearly. Here is an international body that you have yourself admitted you would put above Parliament, saying that they would bring in blasphemy laws. This is obviously going to make Starmer say, well, if the UN did it, clearly it must be good. Right, let's bring it in.
Despite opposition from the previous government, acts of such mindless desecration only serve to fuel division and hatred within our society.
Hang on now. Taking the absolute mick out of the Bible and Christianity has been fair game basically as long as I've been alive. Yet no, it's desecrating the Quran, which was his example, is the problem. Of course it is. Again, we actually have live examples of what happens if you desecrate a Quran. There was some autistic boy who accidentally stuffed a Quran because he was dared to bring it into school. Entire Muslim community in the area went absolutely nuts, and there was basically a struggle snuggle session with the mother of the boy, who basically had to sit with a police officer in front of this big hall of Muslims from the local community to effectively beg for forgiveness and to basically say, please stop sending us death threats and threatening us. So again, even though it's not an official law, blasphemy, it is, as I say, that is two direct examples of blasphemy against Islam just being de facto illegal. you can't blaspheme against them. You won't get into direct trouble with the law, though you will get probably a non-crime hate incident, so technically you actually will, because that turns up on your criminal record. But either way, what ends up happening is you have locals causing a bit of a ruckus, to the point where either you have to get in front of that whole community to beg for forgiveness, or you have to go into hiding. It's not too much of a step to just say, oh, just put them in jail instead. That'll teach them to stop causing a ruckus. And we've not even got to Starmer's reply yet.
Will the Prime Minister commit to introducing measures to prohibit the desecration of all religious texts and the prophets of the Abrahamic religions?
Okay, pretty interesting that he says all the Abrahamic religions. Why not include Hinduism and Sikhism then? Why not include Buddhism? Why only the Abrahamic religions? I don't know if this guy doesn't realise that Christianity and Judaism are also Abrahamic religions. But as I say, his example was the Quran. Clearly this is a special interest for Islam, rather than... It's clearly not one that is designed for all religions, hence he just said the Abrahamic ones. He's not very good at masking his intentions, is what I'm saying.
Can I agree with him that desecration is awful and I think should be condemned across the House?
Well, it depends on the desecration. I'm not going to lie, but I would be happy if people desecrated Satanists and Satanist iconography and things like that. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to condemn that. But this is the fifth wave liberal universalist talking point of, oh, well, if I think it's bad for one, then I need to say it's bad for all of them, which... I've really I probably did used to say, well, I definitely used to say that, but I've really come round to, no, we can actually be dead selective on what we condemn, what we don't, what we punish, and what we don't. Because that's kind of the whole point of, well, having a nation. You get to pick and choose what you consider moral and immoral within your nation. Outside of it, who cares? Unless, of course, you've got an empire and you realise that slavery is absolutely everywhere and you want to stop that. Or you see that there are certain people burning their wives if their husbands die. That's where I can see enforcing morality being a good, but if it's not our sovereign territory, who cares?
We are, as I said before, Mr. Speaker, committed to tackling all forms of hatred and division, including, of course, Islamophobia in all of its forms. Thank you.
No answer of no, we will not make blasphemy illegal. If anything, that was a tacit agreement. Any form of division Labour want to make illegal, what the hell does that mean? And again, he singles out Islamophobia yet again. I do not like the direction this is going. This could be very bad in 4 years or so. What are those rules going to look like? Am I not going to be able to criticise Islam whatsoever? Am I not going to be able to point out... Am I going to be able to say that Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and ISIS are bad things? Am I going to be able to say that? Or would that be interpreted as divisive, Islamophobic, let's say? Or are you going to be specific and say, oh, you can say that as long as you only have a go at their terrorist actions, but you need to make sure you say that they don't represent Muslims. I just don't see how that's going to work very well, and there's every chance that it might be our last year where we can say anything like that. But anyway, you already knew that Labour were full of stupid people, so let's get on to the absolute worst part of this video, the Chagos Islands deal, because a lot have happened since the last time I made a video and wrote to my MP, who never wrote back about the issue. So one of Lammy's most notable acts as Foreign Secretary has been the agreement to transfer the British-held Chagos Islands to Mauritius, and they don't actually mention this, but also we are paying for that pleasure. We are paying rent for the US naval base to stay there, and we are also, part of the deal is to give Mauritius some money in foreign aid to help with their infrastructure projects. Because we're idiots, I guess. A deal reform leader Nigel Farage and others have claimed Trump will veto, we'll get into that, arguing it will boost the Chinese influence in the Indian Ocean. Yeah, it's literally our only last piece of territory in the Indian Ocean, just don't give it up. There's progressive realism at work here, Lammy said in reference to foreign policy doctrine he first outlined in opposition. Progressive realism is when you give your own sovereign territory away and give the person you're giving it away to money for years. 99 years, by the way, the lease is for that naval base. And what's it all for? Well, as Lammy said in the past, it's for soft power in the southern hemisphere, i.e. African countries, South American countries, countries that, despite them generally liking Britain for some years after we, ended the slave trade, have ended up disliking us quite a bit more in recent years, because of Rhodesia and South Africa, I guess, but also because China is investing an awful lot of money in an awful lot of African countries. And, they're kind of an enemy. The most important thing about this deal was securing the US-UK naval base and securing that naval base well beyond any of our lifetimes, 99 years. Okay, if the idea was to secure the naval base well beyond our lifetimes, I think keeping it technically forever is better than keeping it for 99 years. Lammy, you are how did you get into Harvard? I know how you got into Harvard, actually. That secures global security in many, many ways. And it certainly keeps that important part of the Indian Ocean out of play for the Chinese. They own the Chagos Islands. Again, do you not think that, God knows what's going to happen in 100 years, but do you not think it would just be better for us to have it forever rather than risk things getting worse in 100 years? You absolute moron. He added, I'm very confident that when the new administration looks at the details of the deal, that they will stand behind it because Donald Trump knows what a good deal looks like, a reference to his Art of Deal book, and this is a good deal. Unbelievable. He actually unironically thinks this, and this is despite the New Statesman then straight away saying, while Trump has been threatening to impose tariffs up to 60% on all Chinese-made goods, Lammy has led a new British approach. He visited China last month, where he met with the Foreign Minister, Wang Yi, in Beijing, and British business leaders in Shanghai, and has abandoned the Conservatives' hawkish rhetoric. Yeah, so basically, Lammy's trying to say, oh, Trump will see this as a good deal, while Trump is literally treating the Chinese as an enemy. If you are ceding literal territory to a Chinese vassal, Trump is obviously not going to see that as a good deal, and you are deluded, Mr. Lammy, if you think otherwise. Oh boy, and this gets worse, by the way, because one thing Labour always say is, oh, why don't we ask the people who are native to the land that, admittedly, the British kicked off, but why don't we ask the people of the island, the native inhabitants, I guess you can call them, even though they were only there for 200 years. Why don't we ask them what they think? Well, the natives have been having regular, by the way, demonstrations outside the Mauritius embassy in London to try and say, no, don't give it to Mauritius. They do not like us. They will not treat us well. We would much rather give it to the British. Or, sorry, keep the British ruling it, because I don't think many of these people actually have any intention to go back to the Chagos Islands. But they obviously will know friends and relatives who were moved over to Mauritius who were completely mistreated by Mauritius. And they feel, ironically, even though they were kicked off the island by the British, better treated by Britain, because a lot of them were allowed to go over to Britain and claim citizenship there, which, I'm not going to lie, if you've been kicked off your island, I think that's fair enough. But my god, does this keep getting worse for Lammy and Labour? Because Mauritius recently elected in a new Prime Minister, and the new Prime Minister of Mauritius has said that he has reservations about the deal struck with his predecessor with the UK government last month over the Chagos Islands. Let me just make this clear of what this deal was, by the way. This was giving Mauritius more territory, this was giving Mauritius money for the lease of the US naval base, and this was also giving Mauritius foreign aid. Even with all that, the new Prime Minister of Mauritius says, yeah, I have issues with this. Now, he did not outline his precise issue with the agreement, but Cabinet Minister said there were problems with the lease agreement. It could also face opposition from US President-elect Donald Trump's administration. The UK Foreign Office, said the deal was in both sides' shared interests. No, it's just in Mauritius' interest, but even so, because they think it's going to annoy Donald Trump, they don't want to go through with it. That is how bad this deal is, that even though we are literally giving things to Mauritius for free, they don't want to annoy America, because it's that bad for America, and us, obviously. A spokesperson said this included ensuring the long-term effective operation of the joint UK-US base on Diego Garcia. They added that the accord had been welcomed by the US and India, and that the Foreign Office looked forward to working with the new Mauritian government to finalise the deal in a treaty. Marco Rubio, Trump's pick for Secretary of State, has described the deal as a threat to US security. When the deal was signed after years of talks, the UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and his then Mauritian counterpart Pravind Jugnauth called it a seminal moment in our relationship and a demonstration of our enduring commitment to the peaceful resolution of disputes and the rule of law. There's no dispute. It's ours. Mauritius has absolutely no claim on it whatsoever, and we're still giving it away. And even then, Mauritius have reservations about it because they don't want to sour the relationship with the US, who don't want this under Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is sensible. And I am pretty serious when I say the US really do not like this, more than likely because of Donald Trump, because this has only come out since Donald Trump has become the president-elect. But here is a personal friend of Donald Trump, Nigel Farage, and to be honest, he should just be the US envoy, giving us as much details as he can about the US perspective on this deal.
Donald Trump himself, you say the whole team, but is he agitated, exercised by it? Have you spoken to him about it?
I never disclose private conversations I have with Donald Trump. That's why he likes me and trusts me. But I have spoken to very senior members of his incoming cabinet team. And
so Marco Rubio, people like that.
They are horrified.
This is another reason, by the way, just quick aside, of why I really like Nigel Farage. He does seem, actually, this is amazing to some people, but he does seem like an honest man. And when he says things like, I never disclose things I've said in private with Donald Trump and what has been told to me in confidence, it shows that he is a man of his word. And it's something Reform and Nigel Farage himself constantly say. They just want to bring honesty back to politics. And a big way to bring honesty back to politics is, to say, if I'm having something told me in confidence, I'm not going to tell anyone, especially not a national broadcaster, what has been told to me in confidence. And it's one reason I really like Nigel Farage and why I'm fully backing Reform. But yes, I am not shocked, and it's news that has come from everywhere. It's not particularly shocking news. But if you read between the lines, if Trump's senior staff are horrified by this, odds are Trump is horrified by this Mauritius deal as well. Because basically everyone apart from our own government thinks that this deal is completely moronic. Like, double-digit IQ club thinking that, we'll have slightly better relations with Africa by literally ceding our own territory. And as we've seen elsewhere, Spain have now pushed for Gibraltar. Argentina are looking at the Falklands. You've shown weakness in ceding your own territory. Of course, our foreign overseas territories are now under threat. Well done, Labour. Nobody wanted you to do this.
Why?
Because they know that China has extraordinary naval ambitions. We see that literally every month in the South China Sea as they encroach on new territories, they try and reclaim atolls.
Yeah, just why would you cede any power to China, let alone sovereign territory, by the way? Why give them any concessions? That is effectively, literally everyone's thinking apart from Labour's, but all Labour really care about is the process. Are we following international law? Right, it must be the right thing then. Outcomes don't matter to them. They are crazy. And I do mean that because David Lammy has played down all these criticisms from the new Mauritian Prime Minister and the incoming Trump administration of the deal to cede control of the Chagos Islands. The Prime Minister obviously voiced doubts over the agreement that we've been through. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage told BBC Newsnight that it would damage Sir Keir Starmer's reputation with the US, which we just saw. And the deal is still subject to the finalisation of the treaty, but Lammy told the Commons Foreign Affairs Committee that it was a good deal and that it addressed US concerns. He is very, very confident that this is a deal that Mauritians will see in a cross-party sense as a good deal for them. Well, yeah, we're giving them free money and land and getting literally nothing from them in return. And we've been through everything else. But yeah, David Lammy is literally just sticking his head in the sand over this. And it gets even worse because Sir Keir Starmer is now trying to rush through the treaty to give away the Chagos Islands before Trump can become US president. It comes amid mounting speculation that Trump could oppose the deal and hand over the Indian Ocean territory to Mauritius, which was backed by Joe Biden before. While the US is not directly involved in the decision, its support is critical because of the military base it has on Diego Garcia. Senior Republicans have been critical of the deal, as has Nigel Farage, as we know. There are concerns with US national security, as we know. Does Starmer care? No, he's heard that the international community and international law state that this is going to be a good thing. The absolute moron. And because the process is all that matters, he doesn't care. Are there any legal ways I can get this through before Donald Trump can come in? Yes, okay, let's try that. instead of just trying to have good relations with our biggest ally, effectively, you know, our liege lord, the United States, if you will. That is obviously better than effectively trying to get the little goodwill we will get from the global south, China and Russia. There's no point. It's wholly unnecessary, as even though I cut it out, as Nigel Farage said. And we, again, what do we actually get in return? Nothing solid. So what is the point? The point is that it makes Sir Keir Starmer and his cabinet feel good about themselves. We are a country running on really wonky vibes. And it has pretty much already put us on our knees as a country. And they haven't even been in power 6 months. No wonder that petition to have a new general election is just scraping on 3 million signatures. And that's all we can do for now, because the right wing couldn't get their act together. They kept Rishi Sunak in for some goddamn reason, and absolutely no one wanted to vote for that. So we've ended up with a Starmer government and obviously reform. We're in a bit of a rush to get everything ready, and they didn't quite manage it. But hey, anything can happen in the next 3 to 5 years, so I guess just look forward to that. Right, as mentioned at the start of the video, please subscribe. I really hope I make it to 10k by the end of the week. Obviously, there will be a stream if I do. Become a channel member, send super chats, super thanks. They also really help the channel. Shill time, videos out as and when I can make them. Next Monday over on the Worcester Club it's the Antiquity stream, and then on Tuesday it is the newscast, and then Saturday it's Laughing at the Guardian. So look forward to all that, I know I am. Right, that's everything I had for you for today. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.